The band begins with frontman Ian Astbury's early days as vocalist for Southern Death Cult back in 1982, where he teamed up with ex-Theater of Hate guitarist Billy Duffy and embarked on a new and more ambitious creative endeavor. Initially labeled as Death Cult, the duo released a brace of EPs, shortened their name, released their impressive but decidedly non-traditional debut album Dreamtime in 1984, and began to prod purposefully at the lower end of the UK singles charts and the top end of the then highly influential indie charts, with propulsive goth-tinged rockers like Spirit Walker and Resurrection Joe. In stark contrast to the majority of their goth peers, however, the Cult were swift to recognize that, somewhat ironically, being mere cult figures was a rather meager aspiration, and that bigger and better things were out there for the taking. Inspired by an increasingly intense adoration of the 70s classic rock bands that punk had often sought to discredit, Astbury and Duffy struck upon a new plan that would turn them into bona fide rock stars. They've always had a punk rock attitude, a visceral and energetic response. Although Dreamtime was a strong album, and one that had garnered plenty of critical praise, its blend of Wild West macabre and post-punk tribal thumping made it seem more like a logical progression from Astbury's Southern Death Cult days than any kind of tangential leap. The frontman's fierce self-confidence and desire to create enduring art, rather than zeitgeist-chasing scene fodder, ensured that when the Cult came to make their second album, the wheels of progress were already in motion and punk's haughty clarion cry of "never trust a hippie" was being kicked brusquely into touch. Their very first ever big gig was in 1984, co-headlining a festival in Leeds with Killing Joke, where Ian Astbury unveiled his psychedelic look, and Billy Duffy was dressing like the guy with the shotgun in Apocalypse Now, who'd gone and started hanging out with Colonel Kurtz. I had that Vietnam tiger stripe, Clash-influenced combat rock kind of vibe, and Ian was doing his Gothic Mohican thing, and then he just showed up at this gig, and he had a paisley cardigan on and pink glasses. Ha ha, Duffy recalls. As the Cult's new material began to take shape, it soon became apparent that Ian Astbury's image change was indicative of a more holistic focus shift, as those Led Zepp and Doors influences began to infiltrate their band's compositional process. The true watershed moment came when Astbury and Duffy hit the studio, with bassist Jamie Stewart and drummer Nigel Preston, to record a precursory single that was intended to get the ball rolling for the next full-length record. Shifting to Beggars Banquet Records from that label's subsidiary imprint Situation 2, the Cult entered Olympic Studios in Barnes, London, which Led Zeppelin had used previously, hoping to team up with renowned rock producer Steve Lillywhite. The album was recorded in July and August 1985. Due to a slight miscommunication with their management company, the band ended up with former Wham producer Steve Brown, a potentially calamitous pairing that irritated Duffy and amused Astbury no end. As it turned out, band and producer would develop a great and lasting chemistry. The recording of the aforementioned single, a catchy little number called She Sells Sanctuary, proving a potent starting point. Love was released on 18th of October 1985. Released as a single on May 17, 1985, She Sells Sanctuary was an instant hit in the UK and was embraced with great alacrity by both the few radio stations that played rock music and every single rock-centric nightclub in the country. It peaked number 15 on the UK singles chart in July of the same year. That insistent, pulsing beat, Duffy's mesmerizing guitar hook and Astbury's impassioned vocal had combined to create what is now widely regarded as one of the truly great rock anthems of the 80s, and the Cult instantly outgrew their cult status as a result. Sanctuary is always a joy to play, even 25 years later. No one ever bitches about playing it, Ian included, and he's not the greatest lover of touring. We've never had a problem with Sanctuary. I'm happy we've got a song like that. Something like Fire Woman is a very popular song around the world, but it's very challenging to play and sing and do. It's not one that we like playing. That's a bit of a chore to play, just the way it was written and constructed. Sanctuary's just fun and rolls along, Billy Duffy stated earlier this year. The band ended up giving drummer Nigel Preston the boot following his erratic behavior and enlisted a new drummer. His shoes would be filled in the studio by Big Country's Mark Brzezicki. After the Cult, Preston worked with Nile Rodgers in New York. He also played in the band DeLuca with Albie DeLuca, Gene Loves Jezebel, and Gary McDowell, Modern English. In 1990, he joined Irish rock band The Baby Snakes, but soon afterward was sent to prison for armed robbery. After his release, he also performed with the Gun Club. Preston died of a drug overdose on the 1st of April 1992 at age 28. After the departure of Nigel Preston, the band entered Jacobs Studios in Farnham, Surrey, with Brown once again at the controls, and began to sprinkle the same magic over the rest of their new songs. Egged on by Brown, who swiftly realized that Astbury and Duffy would have to be physically restrained from coming up with a relentless stream of ideas, Love took shape over 4 feverishly productive weeks in the summer, although often spawned by extended jams and pieced together from several takes to create one perfect whole. The likes of dark disco tone-setter Nirvana, surging Son of Sanctuary's second single Rain, and the rumbling swing metal of Big Neon Glitter amounted to the perfect fusion of classic rock swagger and spine-tingling post-punk intensity. The Cult were discovering the true depth and versatility of their newly enhanced sound, too. Whether whipping up a densely atmospheric storm of sinister melodrama on the epic Brother Wolf, Sister Moon, and throwing the mellifluous tones of female backing vocal troupe, the Sultanas into Revolution's strident brew, or raising hallucinatory hell on the wild histrionics of the Phoenix, Love showcased a band brimming with self-belief and a genuine desire to tap into rock and roll's effervescent essence while fearlessly striding into virgin territory. It was the second single from the album, released in 1985 and reached number 17 in the United Kingdom's singles chart. The song was provisionally titled Sad Rain during its writing and recording stages, the lyrics being inspired the vocalist frontman Ian Astbury's interest at that time in northern Native American culture, and a rain dance of the Arizonan Hopi people. Despite the song's popularity with the band's audience, and it being one of its more commercially successful single releases, after performing it on the 24th of November 1989 at Wembley Arena, Astbury asked the crowd, "So you like that one?" And after it cheered in response, he responded with, "Well, personally I don't, but there you are." Although as he laughed when saying this, he may not have been serious. Despite upsetting a significant proportion of their die-hard goth and post-punk fan base by so proudly proclaiming that allegiance with rock and roll tradition, Love was an instant and substantial hit in the UK, rapidly becoming Beggars Banquet's best-selling album ever and steadily establishing the Cult's status as the UK's brightest new rock hopes on the other side of the Atlantic. That shrewd but sincere combination of otherworldly eclecticism and more familiar and widely revered rock and roll elements immediately struck a chord with American rock fans. By the time the band started thinking about a follow-up to Love, their subsequent reinvention as a convincing arena rock behemoth, courtesy of the Rick Rubin-produced Electric, was practically a done deal. Even so, Ian Astbury remained wary of any attempts by outside forces to pigeonhole his band or restrict their creative desires. In 1984, they came to the United States of America for the first time with the Dreamtime record. The band was very much entrenched in the genesis of the American postmodern scene. Then they came back and did another tour with Love. The CMJ Awards gave us Single of the Year for She Sells Sanctuary, and we were on Saturday Night Live, too. We were very much an independent, postmodern band, but as soon as people started putting that tag or that stigma on us, we very naturally gravitated toward something else because we'd done that, and we'd said that, recalls Astbury in 2010. The good thing about the songs on love is that they deal with things that are no less relevant now than they were then. Life, death, sex, materialism, spiritualism, all the human experiences. Creating love, we were trying to make a flower instead of a barbed wire fence. That took a real presence to do that. Astbury recently surmised as he looked back on the album that made him a worldwide star. 27 years after its release, Love has shifted in excess of 2 million copies worldwide and has been reissued, repackaged, and reassessed on numerous occasions. The Cult have made many great records over the years, but this is the one that continues to define the band in the eyes and ears of their most ardent admirers. Proof that instinct and conviction are far more powerful and worthwhile artistic tools than cynicism or puritanical tyranny. Love continues to resonate, because it dared to be a balls-out British rock album at a time when such values were routinely viewed with suspicion. Above all, Love is an album of great and ageless songs played by one of the greatest bands of this or any age.